Hello and welcome to the Arise interview, where we take time to reflect on the big stories from the news and on the fortunes and affairs of the world in an hour of conversation with commentators, analysts and thought leaders. I'm Charles Onyeka. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, today we celebrate the vast labyrinthine career of Onyeka Onwenu, one of Nigeria's most prolific music and movie artists, a relentlessly interesting personality who's also an internationally acclaimed journalist, a brave heart who ventured into the murky world of Nigerian politics and government and survived. Her new tell-all book about her life and career has been published and is generating a huge surge of interest. The inimitable Onyeka Onwenu, coming up. Now, my guest today, Onyeka Onwenu, is surely one of the most significant women of any generation in Nigeria and across the continent. The epic sweep of her career is the stuff of legend. BBC journalist, NTA broadcaster, Nollywood A-list actress, international singer, hit music maker, social critic, acting or activist leading the charge for women in Nigeria, and of course, politician. And now she's captured it all in her new book titled My Father's Daughter, a dazzling evocation of her life in Nigeria and beyond, and its effect on her uncommon vocation, a sort of immersion in the peaks and troughs of living and working in this country and abroad. The book has been described as provocative, revealing, audacious, and deeply personal. I've perused its pages and I can certainly attest to its compelling strength. Well, in a moment I'll be speaking with Onyeka Onwenu herself. But first, to a BBC international documentary produced in 1983 that first got her noticed in the UK and Nigeria. Here's a short clip.
In the hours of December 31st, 1983, a well-organized military coup under the leadership of Major General Buhari took place in Nigeria. It was not unwelcome by most of our people, and it was not unexpected. Our economy was in a mess, and yet we are not only the biggest country in Black Africa, we are, or should be, one of the richest. My name is Onyeka Onwenu. A few weeks before the coup, the BBC and Nigerian television asked me to report as a Nigerian television journalist on the situation in my country. Recently, like many Nigerians, I've felt frustrated and saddened by what has happened to us. We've had our independence for more than 20 years. By third world standards, we have a well-educated elite. We had a productive farming economy. We have minerals. And we discovered a few years ago that we had oil, a lot of oil. Yet today we are importing food that we should be growing. We are a bankrupt nation, and we have an international reputation for large-scale corruption. Many of our people are unhappy, and some even hungry. What has gone wrong? This is what I set out to explore. We sensed that change had to come to our nation, that our people wouldn't continue to accept the inefficient, corrupt civilian government of President Shagari. We were right. Before this film was completed, the coup took place. So our report, instead of being a prophecy, is now an explanation as to why the majority of my people, most of whom know what democracy is about and want it ultimately, welcomed yet another military takeover. I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. The story I have to tell is a personal one about my hopes and fears for my country. Apart from journalism, I'm a singer. And I suppose this more than anything is my way of communicating my feelings.
Well, that's a little snippet of that amazing documentary all those years ago, A Squandering of Riches. And I'm delighted to say that Onyeka Onwenu joins me now from our studios in Lagos. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. And let's just talk a little bit about that amazing documentary, A Squandering of Riches, which came out, or should I say exploded onto the scene in 1983, I believe. I mean, it didn't just take the temperature of Nigeria, it heated up the country, didn't it?
It did, most certainly.
Remind us of how that film actually came about.
The producers needed someone to write a song for the film, and my name came up. And they came to visit. And while talking and discussing Nigeria, I didn't realize they were taking notes. They came back the following day and said, look, can you write this film for us? Can we see Nigeria through your eyes? And I was flattered. And I thought it was a good chance to talk about all the things that had been bothering me and most of the young people in Nigeria at the time. So I took on the opportunity.
I mean, I have to say that, you know, that's a documentary that has stood the test of time, not only in terms of the absolutely brilliant quality of the, you know, the production. Obviously it was a BBC production, but the quality of your journalism, your presentation, all of that. I mean, was that when you hit the big time with that documentary? I mean, it aired on the BBC, it aired in Nigeria. Was that really what did it for you? Let me put it that way.
I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, there was a job at hand, and I simply went in and gave it my best shot. I didn't think far ahead to say, oh, I didn't realize what a major thing it would turn out to be. And certainly no one realized and no one wished that 35 years on, it would still be relevant. So that's the sad part for me. I really didn't know what I was doing except go in there and look at your country and see what can be done, and talk to people, find out how they feel, and what are their suggestions as to how we could remedy the situation.
And it was largely about, if I remember correctly, warning Nigerians about corruption, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was mainly about corruption. We had so much money coming in from the oil, and you just couldn't see where it was going. And some of the projects Nigerians did not agree with at the time. Some of them have turned out to quite the contrary, to be good projects. The movement to Abuja, a lot of people would tell you was a good thing. So then Nigerians were criticizing it. But certainly, the main thing at the time was the 5 billion naira rice import that could not be accounted for. I mean, we were talking about 5 million then, and we were going, oh my God. And now we're talking about trillions. And I'd like to say that we've squandered the wealth we had and the one we didn't have, because we're squandering the future.
And of course, the next question I was going to ask you, I think in some ways you've answered it, but if you could expand on that a little, because I was going to ask you, has corruption deepened or lessened in Nigeria since you made that documentary? But then I suppose you've answered it in some ways.
I have, yes. It has deepened, most certainly, yes.
And I mean,
and it has trickled down. It's at every level. It's not just about the government. It's the society itself.
Right. Well, I mean, I want to return to politics a bit later in the chat, because, I mean, I know you made a foray into politics at one point, driven by your need to make a change in Nigeria at the grassroots level. I mean, hopefully we'll get to talk about that before the end of the program. But let's talk about your career, which is the part of your career that you're noted for, which is, you know, broadcasting, but more music and acting. I mean, it's extraordinary to think of the incredible breadth and scope. I mean, just the music and acting alone. I mean, the works that you created in the space of 2 decades. Does that boggle your mind as it does ours?
There's nothing to boggle anyone's mind with. I haven't done enough. I've done some good work, quite a few films, like Half of a Yellow Sun, which was a thrill for me to do, and certainly was about a story very close to my heart, related to the Biafran, the Nigerian Civil War. So I loved doing that, and working with an international crew, an international cast, was magnificent. And so on. Just not enough of those. I wish I could do more. I want to do more. I want to give more. I want my work to be relevant. I want people to see whatever I do, even if it's just entertainment, I want people to grab something out of it. The cultural essence, the beautiful cultural essence of my country, of my people, I always like to let shine through.
Well, absolutely, and we have a snippet of that film, your performance in that film, coming up after we take a short break in the next few minutes. So I think for those who haven't actually seen it, they're going to see that that is you again putting your imprint on the international stage. But you are often spoken about as an extremely private person, though publicly you're always in the media glare. But now you've published this tell-all book, which is a deeply personal account of your life. I mean, was it difficult to do that and sort of bare all to the world?
No, it's not a bare all. It's not a kiss and tell. It's not a tell all. It's nothing like that. It's just my story, my truth. Some of the things that have happened to me that people didn't know about, but I thought would make interesting reading, and they may be able to find themselves in the story. Stories about my family, the losses, the gains, the mistakes I've made, even way back in secondary school, failing a class, how that came about and how it was turned around for me by the Almighty God. So, you know, it was just tell your story. I didn't think of it as a tell-all, and I didn't tell all. Listen, there are lots of things I didn't write about. If you want to know, maybe there'll be a sequel, I don't know. But it's not a tell-all. It's just a bunch of interesting stories that needed to be told.
Yeah, I suppose the reason it
was difficult to write.
Did you say it wasn't, or
yes,
it was difficult?
Absolutely. It was difficult.
What made it difficult?
That's because you're talking about very personal things, and things you may have forgotten about, and you're just regurgitating in the process of writing a book, and suddenly you find, oh, hadn't quite dealt with that, and you have to take time out and really deal with it. But so it gave me a wonderful opportunity to look at those issues that I had put away and deal with them, hopefully, finally, for the last time. Interesting.
I imagine to some extent that would have been therapeutic, but also fairly painful, having to dig into some things, because
Absolutely.
Some of the things I came across in the book were quite revealing. But let me ask you to stay with us. We've got to take a break. We'll be back in a hot second. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the celebrated Nigerian entertainer, Onyeka Onwenu. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now, she's a singer and an actress, as well as a rights activist and a journalist. And for a time, she even ventured into politics. The popular, hugely successful entertainer Onyeka Onwenu is my guest today. She's written a new book about her life and career, a profoundly moving contemplation of the relationship between a young girl born into a political family who grows up to become a talented female artist, broadcast journalist, and to some extent politician in a male-dominated country. Superbly written, it is both a portrait of Onyeka Onwenu's amazing career and an affirmation of her life in the face of towering achievements and bitter loss, tasted and tested again and again. We'll speak to her some more in a moment. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And your book that you've just released also documents your experiences during the Nigerian Biafra Civil War. Yes. You were on the Biafran side. How much did that experience provide the material that informed your role in the movie Half of a Yellow Sun?
A heck of a lot. Of course, I had to always dig deep back to the time when, shells were falling beside and people were running helter-skelter, and you had refugees in their own land, and we had to be moved 2 times from Port Harcourt to Obusi, from Obusi to Arondizog, and even Arondizog was just 10 miles away from the war front of Okigwe. Those were harrowing times. So you got to bring all that back when you were, and I could remember everything. I think the editor had to really stop me at some point. I could remember everything. It was as if it was just yesterday in my mind's eye. So, of course, it had a huge influence on the film, but more than anything else, my mother, my paternal grandmother, were all channeled in that film. These were able women who were very protective of their children, and my mother had a powerful pull in the family and in the community, and when she's made up her mind to do something, nothing can stop her. So that was Chiwetel's mother really was trying to protect her only son, and you know what sons mean to Igbo women, and her only child, and she would do any and everything to protect him. But when she realized that by fighting Thandi Newton, the woman that her son chose, that she was depriving her son of true happiness, she made a switch, 360 degrees, and came back and began to love this young lady and accept her into the family. That was what I loved about her. She had to be strong, she was. She had to be nasty, she was. But when she needed to switch, she came to her senses and embraced this woman and actually asked her to marry her son.
Well, I have to say, I saw the film a couple of times, and it was very, very impressive, not just in terms of the technical quality, but also the acting skills, I mean, that people like yourself brought to it. And you mentioned your mother, who was obviously quite close to you. I mean, let's segue into talking about your family, the family that you grew up in, your parents and your siblings. What would you tell your therapist about your relationship with them?
Oh, Charles. Go on, Charles.
Seriously,
what would I tell my therapist?
I'm curious to know what you would tell your therapist about your family, your relationship with your mother, your father, your siblings.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Wouldn't have it any other way. Wonderful people. My father was extraordinary. My mum, they just don't make them like that anymore. She was incredible. Every single one of my siblings, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. You don't choose your family. You're kind of thrown into it as you come down from heaven. So I just found myself with this wonderful family. Oh, did we fight? Of course. Every family is abnormal. There's no normal family. There's always something. But you see, you love yourselves through it all. And that relationship, it involves the good and it involves the sometimes not so good. But they're family, and they always will be, and you love them. I love my family.
Well, yes, I do understand that. That's a normal sort of human reaction. But I mean, that is not what you would tell your therapist, would it? But let's not go too far down that road. Let me just mention this, because there was a part of the book that made me quite curious. There was talk about, after I think your mother passed away, land squabbles over land and your brother or something throwing you out of the house and taking possession of the family home or something to that effect. Could you sort of clarify that point for us?
It was a very painful part of my history with my brother, because he had actually been a father to me and a friend, a very, very close friend. So when that happened, it was a whole lot of things were happening in the family. And I wrote about it to show what women, even women who have reached a certain level in society, like me, can still go through at any given point. He felt it was his right to take all my land, including not that I inherited, but that I bought with my own money, and that I had no right to own land. And there was not a squabble. I simply walked away from all of it, and I said, look, we're not going to quarrel over this. You can have it all. And that's what my mother would have expected me to do. But in the long run, I'm still the custodian of the Owenu family estate, and it will be fairly handled for everyone involved. We can never squabble about anything. My mum always discouraged that. Walk away, she would say, walk away.
Well, I mean, that's a fairly depressing part of the book. I have to say, when I read it, it touched me in a particular way. And I'm just curious to know how you square that against the fact that you are, you know, to some extent seen as this kind of feminist icon, this, you know, woman who will fight for her way, but you let that happen to you.
Yes, I did. I did out of respect for my parents. I also knew that I could always buy land and replace all that had been taken, but I couldn't replace my family. So I chose family. I chose family unity. I chose for peace to reign and for me to lose. But at the end of the day, all of that land is back in my custody. So there was nothing lost, nothing at all.
Well, I'm glad it ended reasonably well, but I'm going to ask you to please stay with us because I'm really enjoying talking with you. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the journalist and entertainer Onyeka Onwenu. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Onyeka. Now, my guest today is the singer, actress, rights activist, journalist and writer Onyeka Onwenu, who is considered to be one of the most significant women of her generation in Nigeria. She's written a new book, a deeply personal account about her life and iconic career. It's called My Father's Daughter, and it contains everything from living through the anguish of the Nigeria-Biafra War, as well as family intrigues, to feminism in Nigeria and forging a career that's put her in the center of Nigeria's entertainment limelight for decades. It also examines the challenges she faced working in government and venturing into Nigerian politics. But there's also a message of hope, determination and integrity. We'll talk to her some more in a moment. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And you've been in and out of the corridors of power in Nigeria, or as you put it in your masterfully crafted book, the bumpy road of politics. Briefly, I mean, what was it like for you as both a very ethical journalist in a thicket in which most people simply do not adhere to the proper rules of conduct, and secondly, as a woman in a world that was often intolerant, perhaps even contemptuous of women?
Yes, it was difficult, but it was worth doing. You see, what we women have learned is that we have to keep chipping away at whatever obstacle is in front of us. You don't back out, you don't back off, you keep going at it. and you keep making your points. And that's what I did with the 2 times that I ran for the position of local government chairman in Idato North in Imo State, which is where I come from. And it was an eye-opener, taught me a lot. It also taught me that just by trying, you may not get to your goal, that particular goal, but that effort can lead you into something even more substantial, who knows? And I think that's what happened to me. The process of getting involved in politics, of making my voice heard, of pushing the idea that the local government has to be independent, money has to be accounted for at that level, I kept at it. And people began to listen. I'm glad that some states actually have made local governments very, very independent, a lot more than they were in the past. But what it did was that it exposed me as a person of ideas. And that led to becoming involved in certain projects within the party, and at the end of the day, the appointment as Director General of the National Center for Women Development. So one thing led to the other. Nothing is ever wasted. No effort is ever wasted. And it just gave me the opportunity to say what kind of Nigeria I wanted to be in. I didn't see that kind of Nigeria, but I see many more people who are willing to try and do what I try to do.
Well, that's interesting, because you're saying that even though you failed to succeed in your chosen political field, something positive came out of that experience, an unexpected
Absolutely.
opportunity. Well, let's talk about that, and that's your entry into public service as Director General of the National Center for Women Development, an appointment that was made, I understand, by President Goodluck Jonathan. You were, of course, a political appointee, not a civil servant. How much difference did that make?
Correct. Well, we were totally despised. We didn't come through the system. And the attitude was like, na go stay small now, na go good, and go sakuna. I'm speaking in pidgin English, of course, which says, you're only here with us for a little while, so do whatever you're doing and go away. We're here for good. We are the civil servants. So that was that sort of prejudice against us. But it also made me realize that I had very little time to make the changes I thought were important to make, and I worked very, very hard indeed. I'm very happy with my record there. I'm happy with all that we achieved. It was a lot of work. It took a lot out of me. It made me poorer than I was when I went in. But I would not regret a day of it. And I'll do it all over again if I have a chance. For those things that we were able to achieve, to teach, to show by example, it was worth it.
And I mean, in a perverse twist, you found when you got there that most of the people running things in the Center for Women's Development were men. I mean, how much did that challenge you? Because presumably that came as a surprise.
It did. It challenged me hugely. It was embarrassing to go anywhere with them and walk in as the management of the National Center for Women Development. People would look at us and burst out laughing. All men? There were 2 men, 2 women when I came there, just the 2 of us. But I began to turn it around. And I'm hoping that that is a trend that has been maintained. But in many parts of the country, people are comfortable, not people, the men are comfortable with not even allowing the women to run their own affairs. And that is a very sad thing. But that's what we have.
Well, I found that to be quite sad when I read about it. I mean, I just, it's a contradiction in terms, really, isn't it? Fundamentally contradictory that here you are setting up a women's development center in order to promote the interests of women, and then you populate the, the executive cadre of the center with men. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yes. No. But I fought it. They didn't like it, but the women loved it. Made sure that they were treated fairly and they were given opportunities. We changed things around. I'm quite happy with what we achieved.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Given the many, many challenges you faced at that center, I mean, a job that, according to your book, required almost superhuman effort to cope with, let alone succeed in, what would you say were your major achievements there?
Policy-wise, to begin to truly celebrate and bring attention to issues concerning the girl child. We did that in a big way by instituting the celebration of the International Day of the Girl Child and institutionalized it in such a way that it has now become a yearly thing. We started off the first one dealing with education, and I learned so much because we had a pre-summit summit of just young people, the girls and the boys, telling us what were their challenges. And Charles, you would discover, and it was not really difficult for me to relate to, that some of the issues are so basic that keeps a lot of young girls from going to school. Issues of hygiene. Are there enough toilets? Is there privacy there? When they have their period, do they have what it takes to step out? Are they being taught how to take care of themselves? What about their teachers? Are their teachers sympathetic to some of the things they may be going through at home? And these are the challenges that they have going to school. They told us what they wanted done, and we packaged all this and made sure that all the agencies of government were informed and carried along, including the presidency and the office of the First Lady, who was very, very helpful to us. Now, that has become a yearly thing. But physically, we cleaned up the place, we renovated when no serious renovation had gone on since 1992 until 2014, when we began to do all these things. We increased the revenue base so that we can actually reach out to more women to train them without having them pay any money. We began the IDP training, which empowered many of these women to go back to where they had left in Borno. Some of them could, but others established businesses, and I maintain relationships with some of them who call me to tell me how many people they are now employing. You wouldn't be surprised what little training and empowerment can do for a woman who now learns to bake, to cook, and can employ and starts running a canteen and can employ 3 other people to help her along. She's feeding her whole family. A woman who can knit, a woman who can do hair, a woman who can do beads, a woman who can go to farm and use and start growing small vegetable patches. These were the things, didn't cost too much to do, that we equipped the women with. And also talk about no woman left out. Women being carried along in an age that is in an age of technological advancement. And many of them don't know how to operate these computers and laptops and phones and having access to apps that could help them in their businesses. These are the things that we began to do, and it made a difference. 2.5 years I spent there. It made a difference. And I was also able to bring together the staff to work together as a unit and to begin to have pride in their work, begin to take pride in what they're called to do. They weren't showing up for work for days and some for months, 6 months, and collecting salary. Some come to work at 11 and leave before 4 o'clock. And I put a stop to all that. You just could not do that and get work done. And the women of Nigeria needed us. We could have done more, but we didn't even have the funds. It's a miracle we achieved what we did. And it was through working with international agencies such as the Japanese, the JICA. Oh, they were good for us. UNICEF, World Health Organization, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. We worked very closely together, and other Nigerian agencies, NEMA, to reach out to the IDPs. Where do I begin? My heart was in it. Every day I met with these women, and we transformed them. When they came in, the IDP women came in, when they come in for training, they are weeping. They are remembering watching their husbands hacked to death and their children dying. They are weeping, they are sorrowful, they are depressed, they are sick, some of them, and they bring in their children. We take care of their children. Some of them had to go to hospital. We did all that. But we trained them. When they were leaving, it was all hugs and prayers and a lot of love. we had changed lives, and that meant a lot to me.
I have to say, it sounds absolutely harrowing, but also listening to you talk, it also sounds tremendously rewarding. Sounds like that the success that you achieved there was on a micro rather than on a macro level, which is really, the micro level is where it matters, doesn't it? Because it's touching the lives and transforming people. I'd like to talk a bit more about your experience there when we come back, and we're going to be taking a break very shortly. It's absolutely brilliant talking with you. Let me just say that it's Onyeka Onwenu who's talking to me there from our studios in Lagos. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with a celebrated journalist and entertainer who's just written a new book. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyeka. My guest today, Onyeka Onwenu, is a Nigerian singer, songwriter, actress, human rights activist, social critic, journalist, politician, and former X Factor judge. According to Wikipedia, she's been dubbed the elegant stallion by the Nigerian press on account of the many years she's sustained a dazzling career in entertainment and broadcasting. She's also the former chairperson of the Imo State Council for Arts and Culture, and in 2013 she was appointed the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of the National Center for Women Development in Nigeria. And now she's written a book titled My Father's Daughter that tells the deeply personal, compelling story of her journey through life and an amazing career battling and surviving many odds. But it's also a story that's full of wit and humor. And Onyeka Onwenu is still with me from our studios in Lagos. Thank you for staying with us. And before we went on a break, you were talking about your extraordinary experiences at the Center for Women's Development. I'm just wondering if you felt persecuted whilst you were there, because even your exit from the center was, pardon the word, rather humiliating by your own admission in your book.
Not humiliating. It was intended to be, but it wasn't. It was sort of my riding off into the sunset and blowing away kisses, absolutely satisfied with myself and what I had left behind, and rather looking forward to the future, returning to my profession, returning to having a real life and not working 24/7, doing practically everything. I was editor, I wrote the letters, I corrected, I did everything. I inspected the toilets if there was a show that was going to happen and some people were using our multipurpose hall. Rather than have someone go mess it up so we could have a bad reputation, I would personally make sure, go around and make sure that everything was in order. So it was tasking, but I didn't leave it sad. I didn't, word had come to me that I was on the list, and so I was, expecting it. I'm looking forward to it, rather. When it came. It was just one of those things, you go through it. Those that organized that riotous send-off for me thought that it would embarrass me, but they got themselves into serious trouble. And I am sure that after that particular incident, that it would not happen again in the Women's Center. I was not the first to go through it. It had happened to other DJs on their leaving, and it happened to me. But I took it very well, and it didn't bother me. I did make a point of reporting it because I thought it was a dangerous situation to let happen. Anything could have happened.
But then I suppose after that dark period, the reward to some extent was the explosion or re-explosion of your artistic career, which went in so many directions and just continued to excel subsequently.
I want to give God all the glory because I don't really know how I do it. I think opportunities come. I reach out for some of them, and some just come to me. And when I have even the smallest opportunity, I go out there and I give it my very best, as if it is the last thing that I'm going to do. I think that recommends me for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I'm very, very grateful that my career seems to just keep blossoming, like peeling an onion, and there are other sides to it. I imagine that there would be other things that I could do and would do, and I'm planning to do that might surprise a lot of people. But to me, it's life. Life should be varied. Life should be interested. You should be able to do, and we all have the capacity to do so many things if we can just lose the fear and step out. Don't worry about making the mistake. Don't worry about falling, because you're going to fall. But you see, you would learn so many things from that falling. You get up and you try it again, and you would move ahead. That's just how I look at life. The day I give it all up and I sit in my home and I say, okay, that's it, and I've achieved, then I'm ready to go, and I'm not ready to go yet. So there's lots more to do.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And wondering if you see yourself as something of a fighter? Because, I mean, you fought the people at the Women's Development Center, you fought the people in Nigerian politics. I mean, you've come across as quite a fighter. And at one point, I read that you went on hunger strike outside the gates of NTA, the Nigerian Television Authority, in protest at what you said was the authorities' refusal to pay royalties on your songs. I mean, how much of that was a reflection of the spirit of activism in you? Because, I mean, you really were doing it not just for yourself, but for all the other musicians who never got paid.
That's right. That's what I do. I think I'm fierce when I'm fighting for other people. I really fighting for myself is not something that I do a lot, but standing up to fight for other people, count me in. I will always do that. I was raised to always do that. And yes, living in Nigeria is fighting every day. Living as a woman in Nigeria, at my level, trying to do work and be accepted as a person who's trying to do work, not just as an uppity woman who's trying to prove anything to anybody or who's trying to show off that whatever. No, it is a battle, it is a fight. You fight for the respect which we all deserve, which some people just quite simply refuse to give to you because you are a woman, a strong woman, and they are scared of you. And so the best way to deal with you is to keep you in the background, to elbow you out of things and not allow you and not give you the credit for the work that you get done, for the things that you achieve, but rather put you down because you're a powerful woman who has to be kept down. We take up the challenge, so every day we move an inch forward and we show the younger ones that we can do it, and so you can do it. You don't have to sell yourself. You don't have to say yes when you mean no. You stand up for yourself, be prepared to work hard. And even though society says that you are to be seen and not heard because you're a woman, say no. I have a voice, I have something to say, and I will be heard. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to speak my truth. And because you don't pay my rent, because you don't feed me, you have no control over that.
Well, I mean, we're almost at the end of the interview now. Your past and present are written in your brilliant book, My Father's Daughter, and I would recommend that, hugely recommend it to anybody who's interested. But there is, of course, still a future, isn't there? And you can write that future. What do you see?
I see so many things. I see the challenges of this country, and every day I ask God what I am meant to do for Nigeria, what I am meant to do for my people, particularly the people of the Southeast, Ndi Igbo, who are marginalized and right now are being killed all over the place. We have a lot of young Igbo people who are in jail, and their parents, their people don't even know, and they're crying out, and there's nobody to help. There's so many things that are wrong in this country and very, very painful to watch my people go through these pains. And I ask, what can I do? What can I say?
Well, I have to say, Onyeka, you've done a lot, and we want to thank you very much indeed for being on the program today. Onyeka Onwenu, the writer, singer, songwriter, actress, and journalist. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.